Good evening. So tonight we're going to be reading the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, which is really not a book. A book is something that you hold in your hand between two covers in what has been the case for some time now. It used to be scrolls, you know. And the Romans, we used to have one of these when we were in elementary school, had a little wooden tablet with a square in it, and in the square was wax. And all of the school children would write in the wax, you see, with a stylus, and then erase it. I guess 1,000,000 scrolls were lost in Alexandria when Caesar's soldiers burned the library. It was an incredibly destructive act, likened unto a huge volcanic explosion. Because Alexandria was the crossroads of the world, meaning east and west, really, including a lot of Indian thinking, and we will never quite know how much. And Caesar was against it. I mean, he didn't give the order. He was probably really aghast, really astounded. Maybe it struck him deeper than anyone else in the Roman world. Because I think, just as a book, if you'll permit a little PS here, that one of the grandest books, just as a book, is Caesar's Gallic Wars. It's a first-hand account written by a master storyteller. And I think many of us feel that God is the biggest and the greatest and the grandest storyteller. The whole universe is a fiction story. What Swami Sarva Priyananda called the epic poem of God, the cosmos. So old surveying Caesar trumps across the Western world and unites it in what was the soon-to-be beginning, you say, opening scenes of the Roman Empire. Actually, his successor was the first technical emperor, Augustus, nephew. But old surveying Caesar gave the West a foundation, you could say, for a unified civilization. The Roman Empire we call classical civilization with the Greeks, but in India, and brought peace, 400 years of peace to England. Churchill said England never had it so good. I mean, he really wanted to point out that those years of the Pax Romana, the Roman peace, were glorious years for England. And we know about the West. We live here. And in India, something far grander, something far more sweeping, and by all means, far more of a synthesis of the human mind and spirit and soul, was being developed and had been going on since way under BCE. Way under BC. It's worth thinking about. The West, particularly with the Roman might as a foundation after the Greek inspiration in every possible field, from mathematics to science to playwriting, yes, to philosophy. They speak of the glory that was Greece and the grandeur that was Rome. With the management of the Roman Empire, which Vivekananda was aware of. He thought about it some. He kind of had at a certain dimension, certain level, an admiration or what they achieved. They held together these disparate tribes and different people that Rome had succeeded in accumulating, and one by one, including in the Roman Empire, and eventually gave Roman citizenship to Spain and to women. Very interesting extension. And if one sees an analogy between England and the United States, or at least some kind of an affinity, some kind of a little similarity, you might say that it was the glory, which was England, and the grandeur that we used to think of because of its dream. The French have liberté, égalité, sororité, huh? I put sororité instead of fraternity. And the Americans have liberty. Not only liberty, but life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that dream is not going to die. It's going to continue to shine like the rays of the sun, and in its part, with the rest of the people of the world, illuminate the globe into a new age pretty soon. So many people are expecting it, have been for some time, which according to the Indian panoply will be the sovereignty of the people. Now in India, Vivekananda says there are 3 mountains, if you will, that have contributed to the history of humanity. Mount Sinai, Mount Olympus, and the Himalayas. When I was in school, some wag had figured out, and so as freshmen, particularly one of my roommates was really good at this. He was quite a brain, pick up the latest news. And people were saying that Western civilization was Greek naturalism, which means the forerunners of science, with a thin veneer of Jewish mysticism. Well, I knew well in my heart, coming out of a very evangelical, meaning inward, singing, prayerful but reflective, but singing relation with God, I knew it was the other way around. I knew that Western civilization, the inheritor of previous days, was Jewish mysticism, with a thin veneer of Greek naturalism. Lucretius, Democritus talked about atoms in the void. Well, you can get a lot of wonderful things out of the random motion of molecules, but some of us feel that it's very difficult. I mean, in the field, in the laboratory, experiencing it, out of what we think of as brown molecules of earth, to get a flower. And I'm not just talking about flowers and abstract. I'm talking about looking close up at a flower. And away under BC, the Himalayas, as a symbol, have produced one of the greatest, as we believe in the West, anthropologically melding of cultures, which Vivekananda always said entailed the enhancement of the older culture as the new culture comes in, like a bee. A little sting to begin with, an incursion of a new idea, new peoples, but also sipping the honey. And the Indo-European peoples that spoke the grandmother tongue that we spoke when we were one with them, somewhere in Russia, as the Indo-European people, which the West feels strongly because of linguistic archaeology, they have these common tongues. It came from one grandmother tongue. As they came into the Indian subcontinent, they find, as denoted in pictures in Mohenjo-daro, a proto-Shiva, Rudra, sitting in meditation pose. We discovered the atomic age in the modern days, right? You might call that the inheritance of the Greeks, as and the Romans. They discovered meditation. And because there was an oral transmission, families would be given this part, that part to remember, the Upanishads, verbatim to every syllable perfect before there was reading and writing. So who knows? The West doesn't know. And India doesn't care. But almost before the beginning, immemorial past, they found out everything. And they summed it up, Shankara in whatever, maybe 800 AD, by saying Atman and Brahman are one. Capital A, capital B, infinity within, shining, joy. Infinity without and within, everywhere, all, the capital A, all, Brahman. Atman and Brahman are one. And that's the experience, of course, of the illumined soul. And that's why we're here tonight, to sit at the feet of a recent superluminary. And I'd like to just sort of come here at random and see where we're going. So let's find out what Sri Ramakrishna did today. The reason I say that the gospel is not a book, as we think about something between two covers, these are the remembrances of a man who wanted himself to be called M. Just his first name's initial. School teacher. Taught some wonderful boys some wonderful things and sent them to Sri Ramakrishna. But he himself found the Sri Ramakrishna in 1882, and that's the first time that he says he did. We kind of think maybe he had something going on in 1881, but 1882. And this is just a year later, more or less, Tuesday, October 16th, 1883. And these people are kind of amazing. We'll grant it to them. They had these thousands of years, or however many hundreds and hundreds of years, transmitting things verbatim, every syllable, word of mouth, ear to ear, child, father, mother. So what M would do, he wouldn't write down a note, but he'd go back that night, and maybe in a way that you do sometimes, you just sit sort of in reverie, and he remembered, we'll say, like every word. Then he'd write it down. So, as is true with all scriptures, I feel these are much more readily to be called laboratory reports, you see, of people who were involved in the experiential side of religion and the immediate rapport that that brings. So Sri Ramakrishna was in his room with Rakhal, that's our grandfather Swami, Swami Brahmananda, whose presence is felt in every room, in every cubic inch of every room in this place. The founding Swami's teacher, who some, 10 or so disciples of whom were sent to the West, one to France, 9 to the Western Hemisphere, one to Argentina, from whence comes our Holy Father, whom I think many of you know I simply adore, call him Francis II. So Ramakrishna was in his room with Rakhal, Balaram's father, Benny Paul, M, Mani Malik, Ishan, Kishori, and other devotees. Now these devotees are bespangled, just like the flag. They're bespangled. And if you like, tonight we might think of them as our representatives in Congress. These are devotees. sitting in the presence like planets around the sun of an illumined soul who was so completely drenched in the spirit that, as we call such men in the West, he may be considered a God-man. Donut, totally soaked. We love the expression, fried in the butter of knowledge and soaked in the spirit of love. And other devotees. Master, liberal-minded devotees accept all the forms of God. Krishna, Kali, Shiva, Rama, and so on. And we have to get this kind of first principle clear. We're talking about one shining infinity with innumerable faces. If you become tremendously inspired, forgetful of yourself, in the sudden, instantaneous smile of a baby, amen, you're looking at God. If you feel something in elevation of spirit when you hear a Beethoven symphony, who knew that this incredible synthesis of Handel and Bach and Mozart and Beethoven was divinely inspired, was a sunshine beam of God, you're hearing God. So all of these visages are merely parts of the innumerable face of the one shining infinity. Well, liberal-minded devotees accept all the forms of God, Krishna, Kali, Shiva, Rama, and so on, and on, and on, and on. You have yours, you have yours. Balaram's father, yes, sir. It's like a woman recognizing her husband, whatever clothes he wears. Of course, marvelous stories you know about dogs. The only one, hey, talk about Western civilization again, that recognized Odysseus, when he came back home to Greece after all those peregrinations around the world trying to get back from the Trojan War successful. The only one that recognized it was his dog. Master, but again there is a thing called nishtha, N-I-S-H-T-H-A with a long nishtha. Single-minded devotion. When the gopis went to Mathura, that's where Krishna now in another dimension of his life was king, they saw Krishna with a turban on his head. At this they pulled down their veils and said, "Who is this man?" The cowherd girls. "Where is our Krishna?" With a peacock feather on his crest and the yellow cloth on his body. Hanuman also had that unswerving devotion to Rama, the greatest friendship portrayed in literature that I can think of. Greatest friendship I know of in humanity is between Ramananda and Vivekananda, because they were different dynamics, like the anode and the cathode ray of electrically charged devices that had, because of that, an affinity greater than anybody but them could understand, and of course, Ramakrishna. Hanuman also had that unswerving devotion. He came to Dwaraka in the cycle of Dwapara. Krishna said to Rukmini, his queen, Hanuman will not be satisfied unless he sees the form of Rama. So to please Hanuman, Krishna assumed the form of Rama. Hey, these Indians, see, there you have it all. It's such a melange, like a good soup, alphabets and all, that the West can't make anything of it, the melange. And the Indians understand perfectly. Rama's guru is Shiva. And Shiva's teacher is Rama. But my dear sir, I am in a peculiar state of mind. But my dear sir, Master says, continues to say, I am in a peculiar state of mind. My mind constantly descends from the absolute to the relative, and again ascends from the relative to the absolute, capital R, capital A. The attainment of the absolute is called the knowledge of Brahman, but it is extremely difficult to acquire. A man cannot attain the knowledge of Brahman unless he completely rids himself of his attachment to the world. That's the show. Huh? That's Hollywood. We live in Hollywood, and we know very well that it's not just the stage sets, it's all the buildings up and down Hollywood Boulevard. They're all stage sets for a pretty good drama, let's face it. So when the Divine Mother, and this is capital D, capital M, the infinity shining again, don't you see, was born as the daughter of the king of the mountains, of King Himalaya, that's Mother Durga, she showed her various forms to her father. The king said, I want to see Brahman. Thereupon the Divine Mother said, Father, if that is your desire, then you must seek the company of holy men. You must go into solitude, away from the world, and now and then live in holy company. And I'll have to tell you, because when we get together, it's very colloquial and very companionable. Amen. That's my staff. Mm-hmm. Where would we be? And this the founding Swami would present to us over and over again, without grace. These highly experienced people, as the founding Swami, know very well. They knew it from personal experience. Illumination, and even the overwhelming feeling of this love of God is grace. The attainment of their higher states, exalted states, is grace. So, having said that, the grace of holy company is just almost, to me, indispensable. You must go into solitude, she said, away from the world, huh? And now and then, live in holy company. And how much better than every day to be able to go into the temple of one's own heart and feel the presence of God. I like to say that mystic monks, for example, mystics. Monks are all supposed to be mystic. And what is a mystic? I said in Australia when the Department of Religion was there, you know, a monk's simple faith, the simple faith of a monk, simple monks. The mystic, what is she and he? The mystic is that person who invites the divine presence within their heart as love and light. And light is knowledge. Ramananda said, love is love. So, he's really on a roll here, you know that? He said. And the manifold, Ramakrishna says, has come from the one alone, capital O, the relative from the absolute. There is a state of consciousness where the many disappears and the one as well. For the many must exist as long as the one exists. Brahman is without comparison. Ramakrishna climbed the mountain of God to the very top, and then climbed it again and again and again from different faces like Mount Everest. I like to say the north face and the south face and the east face and the west face. And when he got to the top, Christianity, Islam, as well as all the panoply of more than denominations, every possible way of being drawn to God like a magnet. And he followed all the paths that were available to him. At the top, it was all the same. There is a state of consciousness where the many disappears. Brahman is without comparison. It is impossible to explain Brahman by analogy. You can't take anything else and say like this and like that. The one. It is between light and darkness. It is light, capital L, but not the small l light that we perceive, not material light. Again, when God changes the state of my mind, when he brings my mind down to the plane of the relative, I perceive that it is he who has become all these, dash, the creator, the capital C, Maya, a word related to our word magic. You know, the Magi were the wise men, the mystics that came from Persia, the Zoroastrian land, because they had heard there's going to be a baby born in Bethlehem of Judea. And they wanted to be there. They got there after the birth, and that's when in South America everybody gives presents, 12th night, when the wise men came and gave presents. It is light, capital L. You see, the inner light, apparently, it doesn't have like an external source, right? That's obvious. But it comes from inside, from an unfathomable and obviously you can't drain it. An infinite ocean and an infinite depth. I think sometimes, I wonder about this. I'd like to think we know the answer. Can a blind man see this light of God? I believe he and she can. I believe it. Otherwise, why would we think of blind people, again from the Greek, you know, and so forth, ancient days of wisdom days. The Greeks climbed up their own mountain above the timberline, and they had their experiences. Socrates was illumined, Saint Socrates. Ralph Waldo Emerson called him, Swami Atmatattwananda. Saint Socrates, yeah. Illumined soul. And the truth of the matter is that I happen to believe that this infinity is light. They say God is light. They say God is love. And I was reading in Swami Atmatattwananda, one of his books recently, and wanted to say, he says, God is truth. And our Myron, who was here just a couple minutes ago, he's a kind of like our Santa Claus now. We sent our Santa to Atlanta, now he's there, Santa Claus. And he says, and God is laughter. So like they say, you know, God is where you find him. Again, when God changes the state of my mind, when he brings my mind down to the plane of the relative, that's the universe. Just as well call it what it is. Space, time, and causation. Relativity. And you know, our solar system looks like a record. Yeah, 78 record. You know, revolutions, whatever. But now they don't have any records around for the kids to use that term, so they call it a pancake. But it's a disk. And it takes 50,000 years, my friend, for the light from the other side of the Milky Way galaxy in which we live, in which there are 200 to 300 billion stars, to reach us. Hi. Over there, y'all. Over yonder. You know why holler has such a meaning in the South, where my folks came from before the Civil War? because it's related to the word holler. Holler, you know. When you holler across the hollow, the space between the mountains. So that hollow has become a holler too. I asked our friend Ted McGill from Southeast Tennessee about this, that, and the other, and he's talking about Jonestown or something. And I didn't know Johnny MacDonald, and I know the names of the little towns around his wonderful place in the mountains of Southeast Tennessee. It's a grand place. I said, now, is that some kind of little village over there? He said, no. He said, that's where the Joneses went over some years ago, over in the holler. Jones Holler. So is Jones. 50,000 years, my friends. Let's get a scope on this thing. Let's stand with it. As somebody said, whose name you would know, but I'm going to mention it now because statesman, American statesman, still living. He said, the God of these other people, as well as all the churchgoers that we know about, particularly in the South, the God of these other people is an awesome God. So that light, which, yes, can somehow reach us from that distance away, 50,000, traveling 186,000 miles a second for 50,000 years, let's face it, we got a big deal on our hands on the relative plane. And we think of this as mother's playing ground, like stepping stones. And all of our experiences in life, sorrow and sunshine, are stepping stones to infinity. But if you don't mind my bringing up these people, they've had their disagreements, but by golly, the world's coming together in unity now. It was Martin Luther. Started speaking about the ministry of all believers. And you know what his existential crisis was? The dynamo in his life that plunged his head under the water until he had it figured out through grace. He realized that a finite series of steps will never lead to infinity. No matter how tall your ladder is, if it's got separate rungs. So when everybody was talking about good works, and got a little bit overemphasized on that, because ethics is a means, it's not an end. The saintly, spiritual, illumined soul is not an ethical man. Oh yes, he and she, they're ethical, because these are the required steps. But that's not the end of being. The end of being is the shining infinity with one's own heart, the realization of one's oneness with God. So, again, when God changes the state of my mind, he's up there. When he brings my mind down to the plane of the relative, this playground of God, this cosmic dance, this epic poem of creation of God, I perceive that it's he who's become all these. The creator, Maya, the magic of the show, the living beings, and the universe. Again, sometimes he shows me that he's created the universe and all living beings. Oh, what a beautiful phrase. He is the master and the universe his garden. Hey, little poetry there. You know, people used to take phrases like that out. In the colonial days and even the 1800s, the mothers would embroider just one phrase in a tapestry, you know, embroidered, and you'd hang it on the wall. Mm-hmm. One time in a taxi, I'm very much with the people of Calcutta tonight, they're going through something. They're having a super cyclone, what they call. And when it was in the Bay of Bengal 3 days ago, we called it a number 5 hurricane. And it's the strongest hurricane ever measured at that time in the Bay of Bengal. It came down to a 3 when it hit land. It's a 2 now. It's bringing in intense amounts of water. And how can I forget India? the most amazing, in terms of country creation, of God's green earth, of God's earth. Here I see a little taxi going down, almost a three-wheeler, almost like that, tiny little thing. Very colorful, all painted up in Calcutta. Weaving better than I learned to drive in New York City. And I was a taxi driver in Chicago, New York taxi driver in Chicago, as it were. On the back of his car, painted in such beautiful colors in large letters, God is love. These people, man, they're not from around here. So my sympathy is with all the people. They say in India, when something like this hits, from the wind, you hide. From the water, you run. And with all they've had to deal with over the centuries, the little taxi driver with his taxi cab in Calcutta says God is love. He is the master and the universe and the universe. And all its living beings belong to him. That is knowledge with a capital K. And I am the doer. I am the guru, in his own quotes. I'm the father. Dash. That is ignorance. Don't you see, you can't really have them both. And it's kind of interesting that au fond, as they say in French, at the foundation, like the bottom of the waterfall, the well of water, au fond, at the foundation, like a deep well of water, under a big waterfall. We have the one infinity shining. That's what they discovered. They experienced it. What a theory. Not one idea among many. If that were so, I don't see how anybody, I just don't. It's not a question of persuasion. It's not a question of convincing. It's not a question of thumping the tub, theology, dogma, doctrine. Did I tell you your karma ran over my dogma? It's not like that. If it were true, the Germans have a whole school of philosophy. Aber als, I don't really know whether God exists or God doesn't exist. But I can always think of God, as if, aber als, and then I can live my life in such a way, perhaps that will lead me to an understanding, yeah? So if there is one shining infinity, it's amazing. Logic, the first concept, the poetry of the soul, the whole thing, including one's spiritual journey through life, through time and space, and relativity towards God. Things will flow from that. And one is that God is everything. You can't escape it because there's only one infinity. So it's not God and, it's not infinity and the chairs and the pews and the people in them. Huh? Remember that one where we had the kids? I don't know, can you see this? I have to, well, I don't know. This is the church, right? And this is the steeple. You got me? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Open the doors and you see all the people. The church, the people, everything. You and me, brother, sister, everybody. Hey, yes. The preacher and the flock. You can't have a father without a child, right? So it's a chorus of symbiosis, of incredible interrelation. And that's why I will never give up on the country church, where the preacher and the communion together are one. Can't have one without the other. Preacher, like grandfather, Dad's grandfather, plowing 6 days a week. He had some time for contemplation. He had some time to get close to God. Because on Sunday, oh boy, howdy, would he preach. He was kind of ahead of his time. One time he went to give some man some chicken soup. Because he was not well. And he stood outside after leaving, and somebody overheard him. Didn't think he was being overheard. He's praying. The man encountered him, started him a little bit. He walked off and said, his name was Jeremiah. Walked off and said, humph. He said, that man needs chicken soup more than he needs my prayers. With that kind of a spiritual encounter and relationship and association, you've got the shepherd and the flock, and they go together. They're one. There's no room left over for anything with the one shining infinity. So you'll have to forgive me. I'm a people person. I grew up with the chickens in my mind. I mean, I was a transplanted immigrant boy, first generation immigrant boy to New York City. I'm farm all the way down, I'm just a simple country boy. I went down to camp meeting the other afternoon just to hear them shout and sing, for to tell each other how they love one another and to make hallelujahs ring. There was old Uncle Donald and brother Ebenezer, Uncle Rufus and his lame gal Sue, Aunt Polly and Melinda and old Mother Bender. Well, you never saw a happier crew. Oh, little children, I believe. Oh, little children, I believe. Oh, little children, I believe. It's an experience. And until you have that kind of experience in the community, between everyone in it, including those village churches of every denomination, the rabbi, and the flock. We have here a devotee named Samuel Abraham Klein, whose grandfathers, whatever, sat at the feet of the Baal Shem Tov, an absolute saint of a mystic, living in, quotes, our time, a couple hundred years ago. And here we have Sri Ramakrishna talking on Tuesday, October 16th, 1883. So you've got the other possibility, but what we call that other possibility, you've got God as in shining infinity, we call that the difference between appearance and reality. Quote, this is my house. This is my family. This is my wealth. These are my relatives, just a few. This also is ignorance. So Balaram's father, he must have been quite a man, because we know something about Balaram. That is true, sir. Master, as long as you do not feel that God is the master, capital M, you must come back to the world, you must be born again and again. You've heard about the born-again Christians, haven't you? Second birth. It's a wonderful thing. They feel they're born again when they become initiated, when they find God and accept that existential relationship. And then you got the born again and again and again Hindus. There will be no rebirth when you can truly say, "O God, thou art the master." As long as you cannot say, "O Lord, thou alone art real," you will not be released from the life of the world. This going and coming, this rebirth is inevitable. There will be no liberation. Further, What can you achieve by saying, it is mine? The manager of an estate may say, this is our garden. This is our garden. These are our couches and furniture. But when he's dismissed by the family, he hasn't the right to take away even a chest of worthless mango wood given to him for his use. The feeling of I and mine has covered the reality, capital R. Because of this, we do not see truth, capital T. The feeling of I and mine has covered the reality. Because of this, we do not see truth, capital T. Attainment of Chaitanya, that's another superluminary, 1300 and something, 14. Divine consciousness, capital D, capital C, is not possible without the knowledge of Advaita, non-duality. And because this ancient grandmother tongue, which I say, you see, language is the oldest of all the artifacts archaeologically. Older than pottery, older than rocks that have been chiseled, I mean, whatever they are. If you can get words, you're getting back deep, deep, deep into the ground, into the soil. So, believe it or not, you kind of swim in this and you can hear it. I feel that way about German. I don't speak German. And yet it sounds comfortable to my ear. Because my dad's mother was descended from some of those people that came over with William Penn for spiritual safety, for spiritual freedom, for sanctuary. Thank you very much. So you say, Advaita, what's that mean? Well, it says so right there. A means a, not atypical, as in atypical. It's from the Greek, it's from the Sanskrit, it's into the English. And Dvaita, what could Dvaita mean? Devoid. Dva. It means dual. A dual, atypical. Could you please help me? All right. Yes. All right. After realizing Chaitanya, one enjoys Nityananda. Hey, after realizing consciousness, all right, after realizing the supreme bliss of consciousness, one enjoys Nityananda, eternal bliss. One enjoys this bliss after attaining the state of a Paramahamsa. Well, we're just swimming in the poetry of Sanskrit words. You know what excuse me, we're having a service here. I have to get the choir in, speaking to the choir. According to it, Chaitanya is only a bubble of the non-dual Brahman. So if, after one realizing Chaitanya, that means consciousness, one enjoys Nityananda, eternal bliss, one enjoys this bliss after attaining the state of a Paramahamsa. Well, how more poetic can that be? You know what a Hamsa is in Sanskrit? We're in the realm of poetry. We're in Alice in Wonderland. That's what Wednesday nights are all about when we get together. We're artists we dance and sing like the Hasidim. You know, I've said more than once, why should I talk when I can sing? And why should I walk when I can dance? And that's following after the Baal Shem Tov, who sang and danced for God and with God and in God, and he had God in him in the forests of Poland. His name was Israel. And David danced with abandon before the Lord. So Hamsa, my friends, is a swan. Pretty good symbol, is it not, of God? This inordinately beautiful, pure white creature with great, graceful wings comes flapping from its abode, its realm, the realm for which it was created, the air, the realm of the ideal, and lights ever so softly on the water and folds its wings of the relative plane. So a Paramahamsa is a supreme swan. And that word para has come down right from the ancient words of the Indo-Europeans. We call about paramount. That's kind of like the supreme mountaintops. Paramahamsa. And the word para appears in other Sanskrit words, meaning the highest, like that. So Vedanta does not recognize, he's saying this, the incarnation of God. Well, these people who have realized the non-dual, they don't have any need anymore for anything connected with this wonderful, entertaining adventure of climbing the mountain of God and reaching it. Once one comes home and becomes one, realizes that one was always one with the infinity shining, there's no more need, even for the God people that brought us home. Now, we're not going there tonight because I'm trying to be nice to everybody. The people are running from the rain, from the water surge in India. Lots going on tonight in the world. A true pandemic, worthy of the name, embracing the earth at night and in the daytime. But I say that Vedanta is the most personal religion in the world. That is to say, river of faith. They talk impersonal this, impersonal that. It's a very sad translation because impersonal in the Western mind, particularly the analytical mind, the Greek mind, the English picked up the analysis kids in that left hemisphere. That's what they did. That's the inheritance we've kept with Greece, not the Dionysian, not the mystical as much. We got that again through Jewish mysticism, through Christianity. But anyway, the English, analytical. And so the problem there is that they want to say impersonal means cold, unfeeling. That's just the opposite of God. It's the opposite of the spirit of the Jnani. Because the spirit of the Jnani and the spirit of the Bhakti are one, same wonderful, wonderful, total oneness with God, if you will, an understanding that we always were. The drop finds the ocean, realizes it always was the ocean. So I have to say that when Ramakrishna says this, you got to think deeply what he's saying, because he is kind of like, 1,000-watt light bulb, all you see is the clear glass. I like to point out an analogy. The clear light coming out of the glass, you don't even see the glass. A person who's saturated in God is godly, is godlike. So he says Vedanta, meaning this Advaitic person, this experience, does not recognize the incarnation of God, capital I. According to it, Chaitanya Deva, that's one of the superluminaries, is only a bubble of the non-dual Brahman. Do you know what the vision of divine consciousness is like, he says? He experienced it virtually every day after he got the hang of it. Capital D, capital C. Do you know what the vision of divine consciousness is like? It is like the sudden illumination of a dark room when a match is struck. The incarnation of God is accepted by those who follow the path of bhakti. Don't you see, the incredible thing is that the greatest creature we know, and that's worth talking about too sometimes, that humanity got to the point where it was able to climb on its hind legs and realize God and let the Spirit of God shine forth to help other people find God. So these people, these illumined souls, are the greatest manifestation of God in the universe. This tiny little creature, Ramakrishna likes to say a couple of cubits. A cubit is from your elbow to your fingers. That's a cubit. And this is an L, E-L-L. You measure cloth this way, see? Drapery. Couple of cubits. This little creature, without armor, without a turtle's shell, without fangs, very vulnerable, laid low by a little invisible thing that's hardly alive called a virus, running from the rain and the wind, is the greatest thing in the universe. Because in the mind of the human being, the universe can be comprehended. If you will, the universe comprehends itself. And more than that, can become a shining reality, a symbol and an embodiment of infinity. And among humans, who is the greatest? I asked Swami Shishnan in this very room in the temple some years ago. I had a motive. I said, Swami, the last disciple of Holy Mother, the last Swami disciple in the world, as far as I know. Maybe there was one that was a little older in his dotage, but we'll say that. In Oregon, he was assistant minister here a long time ago. I said, Swami, who is greater, the Jnani or the Vijnani? And he said, the Vijnani. The Vijnani is the Jnani who's already attained his non-dual knowledge, oneness with God, which means light, oneness with light, and the joy, and Satchidananda and peace, for my friend said. The Vijnani is the one who, becoming a Jnani, comes back. Now, why would a person come back? Ramakrishna tells a wonderful story of the wall. There must be something going on the other side of the wall. I don't know if they can hear the singing and dancing, the joy, and all, but anyway, people get up to the top of the wall. And they jump over. One after the other jumps over. But one of them, comes back to tell everyone, come with me. You can do it too. And one of those people that lived in the memory of living men that we have known, one of the Swamis actually saw him, Swami Satprakashananda from St. Louis, influenced Houston Smith and all these people. Interesting story, was named Swami Vivekananda, saying, you can do it too. Stop not until the goal is reached. I'm just graced. I'm just in joy. I am. By knowing you. By knowing you all. That's the one thing I can be sure of in life. Let's see now. To grab a hold of hand. This is a camp meeting on the frontier. This is when religion went popular, or populist. Camp meetings, hundreds of people, thousands of people. Let's see if I can remember how they act. Well, they grab a hold of hands and dance around the ring, keep us singing all the while. You'd think it was a cyclone coming through the air, you could hear them shout half a mile. Then the bell rings loud and the great big crowd breaks hands, drops hands, and off they fly. While I take board on the sugar and the gourd and clean up the Methodist pie. Oh, little children, I believe. Oh, little children, I believe. Oh, little children, I believe. I'm a Methodist till I die. I'm a Methodist, Methodist is my belief. And all the other religions and denominations and people sitting at home, well within the temple of their own heart, getting high, feeling the grace of God, feeling the spirit of love and light surrounding them and then in them. Till Grim just comes a knocking at the door. I am spiritual till I die. All right, let me hand you this, brother. I'm going to hand you this book. God love y'all. God love y'all. There was a wonderful